Uptempo Music and Spatial Ability by Jeremy Sinkyo of Central Washington University. Question of research. Can music enhance spatial intelligence? Present researcher hypothesized that uptempo music can heighten arousal level and enhance spatial temporal ability. In 1993, Rasher Shah and Kai introduced a Mozart effect. The study reported that 36 undergraduates improved spatial IQ after listening to 10 minutes of Mozart prior to spatial testing. The Mozart effect has brought a lot of attention and skepticism to the research community. In 2008, Jones and Estelle replicated the Mozart effect using 86 high school students. The study's goal was to find out if there's a neurological reasoning behind the Mozart effect, or is it just an artifact of arousal. 42 students were exposed to Mozart for 7.5 minutes, and 44 were exposed to silent for 7.5 minutes. They were also instructed to self-rate their level of arousal as less awake, neither, or more awake. After, they were given 17 questions from the Stanford Binet Intelligence Scale, which is very similar to the ones used for the original Mozart effect. The results showed that there's no direct relationship between Mozart and spatial ability. However, those who rated themselves as less awake scored significantly lower than those who rated themselves as neither or more awake. Similar to present study, this study has also demonstrated that Mozart may just be an artifact of arousal, meaning high arousal leads to high spatial IQ. Next study by Roth and Smith was also a replicated study of the Mozart effect, except they focused and believed that spatial scores were caused only by arousal level. They randomly assigned 72 undergraduates into 5 different conditions: piano from Mozart, rhythm from Mozart, melody from Mozart, traffic noise, and silence. Each group were exposed to 5 minutes and 43 seconds of given conditions. They were then given 30 minutes to answer 25 questions from the GRE Kaplan. And as a result, only one person from the silence group scored 84%, which they think was possibly due to high IQ. Other than that, the other 4 conditions scored higher than silence group, which Roth and Smith did not expect it. Results showed that it's not just organized auditory stimuli that can increase arousal level and cognitive ability, but also unorganized sounds such as traffic noise can do the same. Due to the fact that traffic noise group did just as well as other auditory stimuli group did, hypothesis was not fully met. Similar to previous and present study, this study also believed high arousal level can lead to high spatial or cognitive IQ. Next study by Thompson, Schellenberg, and Hussein also demonstrated relationships between music, arousal, and spatial ability. Very similar to present study, this study also believed that tempo music affect arousal level and lead to high spatial IQ. Thompson and al. Hypothesized that uptempo music can increase arousal and mood level, thereby increase spatial ability as well. On the other hand, slow and sad music lowers arousal and mood level and cause poor spatial performance. In this study, 24 undergraduate and graduate students were used for experiment. Half the group were exposed to Mozart and the other half Albinoni, which is supposed to be a sadder and slower song compared to the Mozart. They were then given a profile of mood states, or POMMS, to measure arousal and mood levels. Then, of course, spatial testing similar to ones that were used for the original Mozart effect. As a result, Mozart group were more happy, awake, and performed better than the Albinoni group. Therefore, results did support their hypothesis. This study was also a replicate of the Mozart effect and also believed that Mozart is not only an artifact of arousal, but also mood. Present study also replicated the Mozart effect. Based off convenience sampling, subjects were 10 students enrolled in Psych 363 at Central Washington University in Des Moines, Washington. The independent variable was Mozart, Sonata for 2 pianos in D major, Allegro con spirito, with 2 levels, One level was Mozart at its original tempo of 128 beats per minute, and the other was Mozart at a slower tempo of 101 beats per minute. This was also a between group design, therefore 5 participants were assigned to Mozart at 128 beats per minute and the other 5 to Mozart at 101 beats per minute. The dependent variables were scores from the spatial puzzles and self-report on arousal level. Materials used for study were classroom audio player, polyomino spatial puzzles, and index card with question to self-rate arousal level. The experimenter started off by randomly handing out cards with A or B printed on it. Those with B were asked to leave classroom until Group A finished. Group A, or the experimental group, listened to 5 minutes of Mozart at 101 beats per minute. Immediately after, they were asked to answer a question on the index card, which stated, "Rate how you feel now compared to when you first walked into classroom today." They had a choice from less awake, neither, and more awake. After, they were given 5 minutes to complete as many of the spatial puzzle that had been given to them. Once time expired, the control group, or Group B, were returned and were given similar instruction. The only thing different is they listened to Mozart at 128 beats per minute instead of 101. As a result, researcher found no significant difference between the group that was exposed to Mozart at 101 beats per minute and Mozart at 128 beats per minute. T equals 3.83 and p-value 0.712. The mean spatial puzzle score for Mozart at 101 beats per minute was 10.4, and the mean score for Mozart at 128 beats per minute was 9.4. As for arousal level, there was only one participant who rated themselves as more awake, and that participant was actually from the slow tempo Mozart group of 101 beats per minute. There was no significant difference between uptempo group and original tempo group. Music did not do enough to manipulate arousal level, therefore did not cause any effect to spatial ability or scores. The results did not support the hypothesis, therefore the researcher failed to reject the null. The researcher also failed to show any evidence to support the existence of the Mozart effect. Present researcher found no relationship between tempo of music, arousal, and spatial ability. Possible limitation can be due to ceiling effect. Most participants were already on their third puzzle after only the first minute of timing. In other words, the puzzle may be a little too easy for these participants. Sample size can also be a factor. 10 is a very small number for an experiment. For future study, a more complex puzzle may be more appropriate, and also music of preference can be an additional condition. If people listen to music they enjoy, their level of arousal may increase and produce improvement in spatial performance. Here is a list of references used for this presentation. Any questions?